And then the final measurement was from our scale bar, so we already have that. We've got our scale bar there. To, and I'm going to turn the texture on for this because it was to this sort of discolored mark right here. So it's, and let me pull up the measurement first. 1.75 meters. So let's go from there to basically right there. We get 1.75. So I'd say this is a pretty damn accurate model. Even just Sunday morning, and I picked a few places in the Charles Dean Wilderness, which is a big forest outside of where I live. A couple of historic churches, some cemeteries that I've never been to before that I thought would be cool to explore. So we're going to drive out there, hopefully drive on some forest roads, use the drone to do some photogrammetry. And this will be cool because it'll be a completely 360 video. So I have this Insta360 OneR mounted just under the rear view mirror here, using just a cheap little Amazon mount. And then my phone for directions. This car does not have CarPlay, and I really hate those phone mounts that you stick to your dash. So I wanted something that the phone would be visible, it would charge the phone, and it wouldn't look cheap and messy. So I designed and 3D printed this phone mount that gets the phone up in front of you so you can see it easily for directions like now, and that also doesn't stick to the windshield or the dashboard. So it's actually friction mounted to this little bezel on the dash of the Tacoma here. And then the wire I routed along using some more little 3D printed clips. I routed the wire so that it's out of sight and it goes down and into the dashboard charger there, the USB port. So it's worked well so far. I did some things like this little bezel there to make the phone easier to take on and off. And then I also 3D printed these mug holders because the cup holders on this truck are really only suited for like water bottles, so I wanted something that I could put a coffee mug in. So I 3D printed those, and these are all out of PETG, so that they'll hold up to the heat in a car because they can get really warm. So that's the plan for today. Head out to the wilderness, hopefully drive around on some cool roads, hit up these historic churches, do some photogrammetry, talk about how to scale photogrammetry models, how to geolocate them. We're just going to be using the drone GPS this time. I didn't want to borrow the GPS units from my work, and hopefully see some cool stuff along the way. So I'll switch this over to time-lapse mode. This is the 5.7K video. I'll switch it over to time-lapse for the rest of the drive, just to speed it up. Do that once we get to a stop sign or something. That's my favorite shift, 3 to 4. It's always been my favorite, no matter what car. And then 4 to 5, 5 to 6, meh. But shifting from third to fourth just feels so meaty. Even on something slow like this.
So this is the time-lapse mode of the Insta360 OneR. This is a half-second time-lapse, and it's still in 360, which I think is pretty cool. So we can see the route map that I took for this drive up on the screen. I positioned it over myself as I was driving, so you don't have to see me chewing my lip. But here we are leaving Bloomington, and we're about to cross Monroe Reservoir, which is what we're doing right now, and then going into the Hoosier National Forest, which is where a lot of the sites that I picked for today are located. And as I mentioned, what we're going to do is drive to a couple places, do some photogrammetry of one, the one that I thought was most interesting. So we'll talk about photogrammetry and how to scale a photogrammetry model, as well as just talk through a bit of the processing. But as we go along here on these roads, these are really kind of cool, fun roads to drive. And we're going to go through a lot of the little communities that are located alongside the Hoosier National Forest. And for any international viewers or even those in the US, Hoosier is a demonym for anyone from Indiana, and it's spelled Hoosier. It's also a great movie. Hoosiers, check it out.
Here we are at Pleasant Run Church, and frankly this looks abandoned, and it doesn't even look like that noteworthy a structure, so I'm inclined not to spend any time digitizing this. But we can get out and take a look at some of these grave markers and see what see how old this is maybe, and see if we can find a date for the church. The next one, Hickory Grove Church, that's the one I'm really interested in, so hopefully that'll be a little more promising. Alright, let's take a look. So this one right here, somebody born in 1861, died in 1930. The interesting thing is the 9 is backwards here. March 1st, 1930, but weirdly the 9 is reversed. I'm not sure how that happens with the hand-carved stuff, but there you have it. Those two, McKnight, born 1826, died 1897, so there's some pretty old burials here. (1897), this is a cool one. Sort of a pyre, a carved pyre with some corn leaves hanging out and an anchor on it. Kind of interesting. Here's an interesting one. Edward IV, son of H and M Biven, born August 11th, 1872, killed in a wreck on the Belt Railway, April 13th, 1898 or 1896. Belt Railway. Never heard of that. Another one, 1898. Tree stump. This looks like the oldest corner here. 1879, 1876, 1798. 1798 to 1876. Not bad. But yeah, unfortunately this church, I would say, nothing special. Looks like it's been torn down and rebuilt. It's probably not the original one that was here. So I'm not gonna bother with that. At some point can come back and do it. But for now, let's head on to Hickory Grove Church, which is the next one, the one I'm really interested in. So let's get back in the car and check it out.
So I've got the route map back up, and we're now going along the sort of bottom end of this quadrangle. So we're going from that Pleasant Run Church to the Hickory Grove Church, and this one looked a little bit more historic. I was kind of excited to see this one because it is in the National Forest, or it's completely surrounded by National Forest land. So this is that coming up. And this is the one that we're going to do photogrammetry on. We're also driving along some National Forest roads to get there, and these are just gravel roads that are kind of fun to drive on.
Here's the Hickory Grove Church. Just drove through the Hoosier National Forest, the Charles Dean Wilderness. Saw some cool dispersed camping areas to check out in the future. So let's get out and take a look. Here's the Hickory Grove Church and Cemetery. And we just came up this road, which is Hickory Grove Road, I think. And I walked over there, and there's a sign and some posts that say beyond some boundary trees, that's U.S. National Forest land, and there's a horse trail. But this is private property. I guess it's this Hickory Church. Still appears to be in operation, although apparently not today. Cool church, old, 1881, very simple, just a all wood, obviously. It seems maintained. Some recent burials here, 2018. (1956), 1975. Terrell, that's a name you see around here a lot. I bet the older burials are in the back. Check that out. So this little lamb usually signifies a child. Yeah, born 1908, died 1909. We've still got a lot of room. Pretty cemetery. Seems well maintained. Of course, beautiful setting. Not a bad place to spend eternity. So, let's do some photogrammetry of this church. I think I should be able to get most of it with the drone. And then I'll just a single circuit by hand should be enough. Not going to do the interior because it looked relatively modern. This looks older. Yeah, I can get all around this with the drone and then by hand. So I almost always combine handheld photography and drone photos. It's super easy to do. You just have to be really conscious of connecting your photos. Okay, so quick rundown of everything I bring when I go out to do a photogrammetry capture is UAV. I have a Mavic, a DJI Mavic 2. I really like it because it's small, it unfolds, packs up small, and then it unfolds into your typical quadcopter setup. It's got a pretty good camera, 20 megapixel. They partnered with Hasselblad, well-known Swedish camera lens and camera manufacturer from the old days. I think it's mostly just for the name that they say they partner with them, but it's a pretty good camera. It takes good photos, which is the key thing for photogrammetry. Got my Sony mirrorless with a 12 to 24 lens. This is the A7R2, 42 megapixel, so really high res, good wide angle lens, key for when you're doing large object like a building. So I'm going to combine these photos with the drone. Of course, it's a nice cloudy day, which is perfect for photogrammetry, so we don't have a lot of baked-in shadows. And then the key thing when you're digitizing a real object that exists in the world is scale. Scale and geolocation. We're just going to get that from the drone. It's not going to be super precise, but it's better than nothing. But scale is the key thing because it's a historic church. It's important that it have location and correct scale. Otherwise, it's almost like why bother digitizing it if it's not going to be true to life. And photogrammetry does not have inherent scale. It has no built-in scale, so you need something like this, scale bars, or you need a laser distometer to take measurements, or you need a known distance, something that you know the size of so that you can scale the photogrammetry model. That could be something like this tailgate. It could be the width of the door of the church, the distance from the church to this tree. You need a few of these known scales. So I have this laser distometer to help with that. The drone imagery will help. The geolocated imagery will help too, and then these scale bars, of course, will help. And the scale bars you usually want to put someplace visible. So I'm going to put one on the steps of the church so that it's in the photographs, because you need to pick these points in the photos. Let's get the drone set up. So this controller I like because it hooks up to your phone. So as long as your phone is charged, you should be good to go. Then you have to use the DJI app, or I also like the Pix4D app, but we'll just use DJI because I'm not planning a mission.
Okay. And then for a takeoff spot for the drone, usually you want dry, clear area, obviously. We don't really have that here, but as long as there's no dust. We should be okay. So I just turned that on, got this on first. So I'm gonna take raw photographs because it's nice diffuse light today. It's cloudy. And I'm gonna set it on interval. In other words, it'll take a photo every 5 seconds.
The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
I'm gonna format the SD card. Always good to do before a flight so that you don't run out of storage. So we've got, and it says we have to calibrate the compass, which is really annoying. It's this whole little song and dance, spinning the aircraft around. The days of doing this used to be over, but you still have to do it. All right, now we're ready to go. We've got satellite. So I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna get the scale bar, and I'm gonna fly around the top of the church.
Take off.
And one of the key things with combining drone and handheld imagery is you want to be really conscious to connect your aerial photographs to your handheld points. So I'm going to fly just above where I'll be taking handheld photos from, and that'll really easily connect the images together. And then otherwise, I'm simply going to treat this like an object, a large object, and I'm going to move the drone around it in the same way that I would if I was photographing by hand. So in a couple of orbits at varying heights, getting the entire church in the view. So now I'm taking a spherical panorama just to get some context, get a sky dome for this 3D model. And that's the low battery warning. So that was about 15 minutes of flight maybe. It's down to about 25%. Still has about 6 minutes left, but I always try and land before about 20% just so it doesn't automatically go into return to home. All right, now that the UAV photography is done, I can take some handheld photos, and like I said, I don't think it'll need that many.
just one circuit around with the mirrorless camera. And then you can see the Mavic, just the camera, the gimbal brace on, and we can fold up propellers, and I always swap the battery before I get to the next place I want to fly, just so that I don't have to I just noticed that this battery is swelling a little bit, so this one is done. I'm going to have to recycle this. For the handheld shots, like I said, just a single circuit around the church should do it. For settings on a day like today, I'm going to do f8. What day like today, meaning it's a nice, even diffuse light, but still not a ton of light. I'm going to do f8 and ISO 100. And because this is a wide-angle lens, this is a 12mm lens, it's letting a lot of light in. So I'm going to go around the church and making sure to get that scale bar, and also making sure to get shots at the same points where I had the drone really low. So that'll be right here, and in the back, and on the other side of the fence.
Okay, I've really cranked up the speed here, but you can basically see that I'm just moving around the church in a circular pattern, making sure that there's a lot of overlap between each photograph.
Now, as I mentioned, this laser dystometer is cool because it shoots a laser out, measures the time it takes to bounce back, and it gives you the distance. So this is handy if, especially outdoors, because it has a camera on it so that you can fine-tune where the laser is, because this laser is really hard to see in daylight. I don't know if you can even see it there, but you certainly would not be able to see it on the church. So one thing I'll do, I think just really quickly, is take a point from, so the key thing is you have to pick points that are in your photographs, because if you didn't take a photograph of it, it's not going to be in the model. You're not going to be able to use it for scaling. So probably on this church, this structure, I might try to pick maybe the width of the doorstep there. I don't know, I'm gonna have to go over and take a look. And I may not even use this. I don't think it's necessary in this case because I do have that scale bar in there. But if you were someplace where you couldn't use a scale bar, or they didn't want you to place things on the structure, on the object, something like this is super handy. But I'm gonna go take some measurements with this just for point of comparison, and then we're gonna not put them into the model, but we're gonna take measurements from the model and see how close they come to this. So what I was doing there was making notes of where I took the measurements from, including taking a picture of it, just because, you know, get home 2 hours later, you might forget. You're not going to remember exactly which point. So I took a photo of it. I circled it with the little markup tool in the phone. And this also saves the measurements and it saves the photo from the little pointer. But again, I like having a backup just in case, and it's saved me in the past. So definitely take notes while you're in the field about measurements, about where you took photos from, about where you might have missed photos, about where you stopped taking photos, and so on. Documentation really helps when it comes to post-processing this stuff. Before we go, take a snapshot with this. This is a 1980 something Nikon L35AD2 film camera with a little auto date back. So take a photo of the church with this just to document it. I've got Ektar 100 film in there. All right, let's hit the road.
All right, I'm back at home. I've processed all the photographs I took today and loaded them into Agisoft Metashape, which is a photogrammetry software. And I've done the initial alignment of all those photographs. So here we can see one of the drone photographs, and here's one of the handheld Sony mirrorless photographs. And we can see my little scale bar here that I put down on the step of the church. And what we're looking at here is the sparse point cloud of the initial camera alignment. And if we turn on the camera locations, we can see all of those camera pose estimations that the photogrammetry software has calculated. So all these blue squares are the estimated positions or the estimated poses of those photographs. In other words, the location where the photograph was taken from. And then these points represent, these are the tie points. These represent the common points shared between photographs. So in other words, the detected features that are tying all of these photographs together. And we can see the photographs I took by hand, the lowest ones down here along the ground, and the ones with the UAV, and also the spots where these are sort of linked together. So in the front of the church where I brought the UAV, the drone, down quite low, and then again in the back of the church and on the side of the church. So in a few points, in other words, to tie everything together. So let's turn those off, and we'll turn the markers on. Remember, I mentioned those the scale bar that I put down, and how photogrammetry does not have an inherent scale, so you need to give it a scale, which is what I did there with those 2 points chosen on the 15 centimeter scale bar. So you can see I over here on the left hand side of the screen, I selected those 2 points, and there's an error of a pixel error of about 0.039, which is pretty good. Ideally, you're going to want to use ground control points. You're going to want to have multiple scale bars in a scene, not just one. But because I'm sort of just doing this for fun, one is enough. It's going to give us a pretty good scale. And we have, of course, because I'm only using one scale bar, we have very little error. So what I like to do is I process the scene once, or I align the cameras once, I pick the scale points, and then I realign it with those points sort of in the system. And that gives us a much better alignment, a better sort of scale, better geolocation if you're using ground control points. And then we can process it into a model, which is what I've done here. So this is the 3D surface model of the church, and then we can add texture to that. So here's the textured model, and I'm pretty happy with this. I must say. For the amount of time it only took about 30 minutes. That's the 15-minute drone flight, I would say roughly 15 minutes taking photos by hand, and then of course it takes maybe another 15 minutes to process it once we get back home. But this is pretty good, I think, for the amount of time invested. This is quite a nice model, and it's probably the first 3D model of this structure that's ever been done, so that's kind of cool too. All right, now the moment of truth to see if our single scale bar is enough to give us an accurate enough model to match the distometer measurements that I took. So the first distometer measurement, and I'm going to switch to the highest quality model here. So the first measurement I took was on this side of the church, and it was from one of these projecting beams to the end. I think it was from right here. So there are two of these end beams, so I'm going to say it was from like right about there to right about there. And according to the distometer, that should be about, I took 3 measurements there. I got 8.698 meters, 8.7 meters, and 8.701 meters. So let's use our ruler tool and click there and there, and we get 8.69. So that is, I don't know if it's going to give us any more decimal points than that. It doesn't appear to. So 8, but still, that's like 1 centimeter. So that's pretty good. The other points that I took, one is outside of our model bounds here, and that is over at the gate. So I didn't really focus on that for photography, but let's try that anyway. So I took, there are these 2 stone piers right here, and that I got 1.778 meters for that. Let's see if we can replicate that. I think this, so we can see the geometry here is not great. So I'm just sort of guessing. I'm going to guess right there to right there, and we get 1.78, which is, the measurement on the site is 1.778. So again, that's pretty good. And then the final measurement was from our scale bar. So we already have that. We've got our scale bar there. To, and I'm going to turn the texture on for this because it was to this sort of discolored mark right here. So it's, and let me pull up the measurement first. 1.75 meters. So let's go from there to basically right there. We get 1.75. So I'd say this is a pretty damn accurate model, even just using the drone UAV GPS. That helps with the scaling a little bit, and also just that single scale bar is getting us to basically a centimeter of accuracy in 3 sort of random locations chosen around and even outside of the bounds of this model. So this is very accurate. You could use this model for a number of different things. Of course, to really do this correctly, you'd want to have a number of scale bars. You'd want to have ground control points. But this goes to show you that even with kind of what I would say the minimal amount of ground control, of metric rigor, you can get a very, very accurate model out of photogrammetry with very little time spent and just using consumer quality stuff, like a high resolution camera and a DJI drone. You can get a really good accurate model. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, leave a comment, give it a like. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.